Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Visit Tuscaloosa.
All right, let's do this. The election night edition of Tider Insider TV. Good evening, everybody. The program is brought to you by Tuscaloosa, or by Visit Tuscaloosa. I'm Gary Harris. He's Rodney Orr, and this is LSU week. So we're going to jump right in, Rod, with what's at stake for Alabama. The number 11 Crimson Tide will travel down to the Bayou this Saturday night to take on number 14 LSU at Tiger Stadium in a crucial matchup. There's no other way around it. Both these teams are two-loss teams, and this is basically an elimination game. Alabama 3-2 in the SEC, LSU 3-1. Remember, their other loss was to USC. Alabama's losses were on the road at Vanderbilt and at Tennessee. And Rodney, let's jump in before we start talking about personnel. Just the reality of this game. I mean, I know you told me before the show there's still a lot of things that could happen in the season. I get that, but more than likely, it'd be a very long shot for the loser of this game to get into the college football playoff.
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, again, I kind of had it marked at 2 games that you could lose, Gary, and get in. Again, a lot of things can change. This has been kind of a wild season. But I think this is really, like you said, I think it's probably a playoff elimination game. Both teams, their hopes probably rest on the outcome of this game.
All right, so much is made out of playing in Baton Rouge at night, and it is a horror story for most teams. Alabama's not most teams. The Crimson Tide in most of these games have been at night, 29-10-2 all time at Tiger Stadium. That's the record. That's just the reality of it. Alabama's won 3 times as many times as they've lost there, Rodney. I know this is a new coaching staff. I know this team's not the same team that lost another 2 years ago. But history is relevant here. I just think Alabama, because they're always usually the best team in the SEC, but to have that record there, these players are aware of that. They understand that Alabama doesn't go to LSU with the fear factor that other teams go down there with. I think that's big.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think, certainly the mystique as far as LSU with Alabama down there, it really hasn't worked out, right?
That's right.
It took them, from 1969 to 2000 before they finally beat Alabama down there, Nick Saban's first year at LSU. So, Alabama's had a ton of success down there. Again, I think that, that aside, these two teams, Gary, this is a game that, regardless of what happens what has happened in the past, I think that the real key is what is happening right now.
All right, let's talk about that in terms of the personnel. Let's start with Alabama's defense against Garrett Nussmeier and that LSU offense. He is a good quarterback. I know in the second half against Texas A&M, they got to him and he looked rattled. That's the key. You got to pressure this guy. He's not going to beat you with his legs. He's not like Jalen Milroe. He is a traditional drop-back quarterback. But if you give him time to survey the field, he will pick you apart with surgical precision. He's that good. Again, I don't know. I'm not a defensive coordinator. I don't know if you blitz. I don't know how but you better put pressure on this guy because if he gets comfortable, he's going to light you up.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what you have to do. I think that's what Texas A&M did. Mike Elko dialed up some real pressure on him in the second half of that game. I think he threw 3 interceptions in the second half. Had a really big first half, but Texas A&M came back, got a big win down there. You mentioned it. I mean, he is a tremendous passer. He's a great passing quarterback. He's got a lot of weapons. Mason Taylor's a fantastic tight end. I really like him a lot. I think he's going to be a key in this game. Aaron Anderson, the former Alabama player. We've talked about him a lot here on Tider Insider when he was being recruited and then came to Alabama. Of course, went to LSU. And then, of course, Kyron Lacey, tremendous wide receiver, 215-pounder, Gary. Those are their key cogs. Here's the thing about LSU. They don't run the ball extremely well.
That's right, not at all.
And I think when you kind of start weighing these two teams, you look at Alabama, they seem to me to be a little bit more balanced, a better balance, have better balance offensively. But again, the challenge is, what you said, is getting pressure on Garrett Nussmeier.
Indeed, because you got to get pressure, because like you said, and you got to contain the running game. You don't want them to suddenly get healthy with the running game, because I do think they're going to try to run it early and test that Alabama front. All right, on the other side, Milroe last year gashed LSU. He had a great game, but he'll be playing down at Tiger Stadium. He's been inconsistent this year. He needs to play well, but I think Alabama needs to help him out, much like they did against Missouri. Commit to the run game. They stayed with it. The first game it was ineffective. The first quarter it was ineffective, but they stayed with it. If you can get that run game going, then everything can be worked off that run game. Your play actions, your boots. I think he'll be much more effective as a passer. Do you think that'll be the game plan to go in there and establish the run?
Yeah, I think so. I think we saw it against Missouri. You know, he threw it 45 times a week before against Tennessee. You know, that was too much. I think he got a little bit out of balance there. And then you come back against Missouri. I thought they got him into a rhythm early, Gary. It was quick throws, predetermined throws. Got him some confidence, ran the football really well, especially in the second half. And then you start implementing his legs a little bit, maybe get him on some scrambles. You talked about last year. They had more design runs. Now, don't forget, last year they had the off week. Of course, the bye week, they kind of prepared differently, used Milroe differently in that game. It's going to be interesting to see kind of what Alabama does offensively in this game. But I kind of like what you said, get that running game going.
All right, Nussmeier, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, but most of those interceptions have come in the last few weeks. I think he only had 3 interceptions his first 4 games. He's had 6 interceptions his last 4 games. Pressure. They're also going to be without starting offensive lineman Garrett Dellinger. He's got over 30 starts at LSU, so that's a big loss for them. Again, Alabama needs to pressure and force turnovers. That's a big part of this Alabama defensive game plan every week. They can turn you over. It increases, obviously, their opportunity to win. All right, Alabama will not be at full strength either. Kalen Deboer announcing this week that wide receiver and punt return man Cole Adams will miss the rest of the season with a lower body injury. He, of course, is a guy who is starting to come into his own. Rodney, we got video here of the injury. You're going to see the ankle get rolled up on right there, unfortunately. But this is a guy who's tough. You know, we know he's a good punt returner. He really started coming on lately as a wide receiver. 6 catches for 94 yards against USC. He got a start and had 2 catches for 57. He'll be back, but this is a blow for the Tide.
You know, you feel badly for him, obviously, for being injured. But, you know, his senior year in high school, he misses most of the year with a shoulder injury. He comes to Tuscaloosa, gets here. He's out of Wauwassa, Oklahoma. He gets here. He's injured. He's banged up a little bit as a freshman. Now he's got opportunities to play. He's been hurt. This is his 2nd injury this year. But hopefully he can get healthy, stay healthy, because I think he's a really good player.
I do too. He's tough, and he'll be back, but not this season. All right, the first college football playoff rankings are out, and Alabama's in good shape. I mean, you got to win Saturday night, but right now the Tide comes in at number 11. LSU comes in at number 14. So, Rodney, I mean, this is about what I expected him to be at. So, it's set up for Alabama, if they run the table and win these next 4 games, I believe, to get into the college football playoff.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's all in Alabama's hands, I think. I mean, I think if they win out, you beat LSU down there, then you've got Oklahoma, you've got to go to Norman, you've got Auburn coming here. Those are the 3 big games left in the SEC. And then you take care of business, you're in pretty good shape. It's going to be tough, I think, when you start looking at the strength of schedule that Alabama has, and I assume that still is important.
It's high,
you just never know.
Strong.
But to beat Georgia, the number 2 team, I mean, Alabama's got a great argument.
Yeah, and remember, nobody else has beaten Georgia in 4 years. Their last loss to somebody other than Alabama was Florida back in 2020. I mean, that's incredible. It is absolutely incredible. All right, now it's time for Coach Talk. And late last week, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey sent a letter to the league's coaches and athletics directors to stop faking injuries. For whatever reasons, to create timeouts or to delay play, whatever. The quote that jumped out in this is from Sankey to the ADs and coaches: play football and stop the feigned injury nonsense. On Monday, Alabama head coach Kalen Deboer was asked if he felt faking injuries has an impact on the integrity of the game.
From our end, I already talked to our players, our staff. It doesn't change what we do, because we go about it, and if you are hurt, you need to stay down, especially if it's substitutions that need to be made. You need to be looked at. But you can put yourself in some tough positions if you really, truly are hurt. And that's, I really feel like with what our team does and how we operate, how it's going to continue to be.
All right, Alabama created a lot of buzz in Tennessee game. Coach Deboer and the Tide. Maurice Linguist appeared to push King Mack back out onto the field. Mack went down. It looked like obviously he was simulating an injury there because Alabama was not allowed to get a substitution in there. This play, here's what's amazing to me. Ole Miss has been doing this 5-6 times a game. Other schools do it all the time. Very rarely have we seen Alabama do it. You and I talked about this. I told you then. I said, now that Alabama's been caught faking an injury, watch how quickly this gets addressed.
Yeah, you did.
And it did.
And it did. Yeah, it's nothing new. I mean, it's been going on for how long now? I mean,
several years.
Yeah. And, but it is what it is. I agree with that. You shouldn't have fake injuries, but it is the
It's
timing.
just funny how long it went on, and there was
yeah.
and then Alabama gets caught in a big game faking an injury, and all of a sudden the commissioner issues a response that it's got to stop. The punishments: first offense, the school will be fined $50,000. Second offense, $100,000. The third offense, the school's head coach will be issued a 1-game suspension. So I do think you'll start seeing fake injuries on the down low. Now, the thing you have to be careful about if you're an official, this is yet another thing they've got to deal with now, is deciding whether or not a guy's faking an injury or if it's legit. Sometimes a guy is not faking an injury, but he's trying hard to get off the field, and
it's hard to distinguish that.
We need to give these officials more judgment calls, but that's where we're at. All right, still to come on Tider Insider Television. College basketball is back, and the Crimson Tide men and women were absolutely electric in Coleman Coliseum last night. Stay tuned for more coverage from the season openers coming up next. And we'll also be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets in just a little bit. And we'll be talking recruiting as well. So stay tuned for that when Tider Insider TV returns right after this. And welcome back to Tider Insider Television, presented by Visit Tuscaloosa. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm WVOA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. Alabama football is keeping one of the best defensive line prospects in the class of 2026 close to home. Now, again, recruiting's a lot different than it used to be, but still, it's nice to get them committed to you first. This past Thursday, Vonnie Cleveland out of Powerhouse Parker High School in Birmingham committed to Alabama. This is a 4-star prospect. Rodney, I wouldn't be surprised if by 2026 he's a 5-star. This is the kind of guy, I'm not saying Alabama doesn't have good defensive linemen, but this was the kind of guys that Saban was getting when Alabama was sending first-rounders to the draft left and right. 6'3", 305. A lot of guys want to be edge rushers. A lot of guys want to come off the edge and rush the quarterback. It's getting harder and harder to find powerful interior defensive linemen that are as athletic as this young man. He's got all the tools.
Yeah, a lot of Alabama fans have been complaining for a couple of years about the interior recruiting on the defensive line, that it hasn't been, matching Georgia or Texas A&M or some of those other schools. This guy is top notch. I talked to someone, Gary, that a defensive line guru who said Alabama has picked up a fantastic, like you said, probably eventually a 5-star interior defensive lineman. They're hard to find. They're hard to come by. It's really difficult to recruit these guys because everybody's after them.
Right.
And they're just not that many to go around.
And as I said, they're getting harder to find.
They're getting harder to find.
The way the defensive schemes have changed, it's just harder to find these kind of guys. And so far this season, 6 tackles for loss and 5 sacks in 10 games. He was originally at Prattville, transferred into Parker. Parker's ranked 2nd in Class 6A and opens the playoffs at home this Friday night against Coleman. Vonnie Cleveland, big-time prospect. All right, let's move on to Alabama men's basketball. Opening last night at home against UNC Asheville. And it's one game, Rodney, but Alabama looked the part of the #2 team and a Final Four team from a year ago. 110-54 as the Crimson Tide absolutely demolished the visitors from Asheville, North Carolina. You had Mark Sears leading the way, preseason player of the year, 20 points. Clifford Amori, the new center from Rutgers, 16 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks, didn't miss a shot. They had 6 guys in double figures. All 11 players that played scored, including the walk-on that came in late. Rodney, this team, they're going to play Arkansas State, Brian Hotson's team, on Friday night here at Coleman Coliseum. But one game in, this team looked like exactly what they're supposed to be, a national championship contender.
They had the 2 exhibition games. They scored 98, 96. Now they
110.
UNC Asheville, they go 110. You mentioned it, Gary. They're deep, and all these guys can play. LeBarian Philon, the young freshman guard, fantastic. You mentioned Amori. He was, what a debut.
He's a beast.
Everything he was kind of advertised to be.
Yeah, he's an absolute beast. Philon,
Sherrill.
Sherrill, the whole bit. There's Stevenson, a guy back. Remember, Grant Nelson is limited right now. He only played about 15 minutes. He's coming back from injury. They're not going to have Youngblood until mid-December. This is how good they are. Coach Oates announcing before the game last night that Millett and Cunningham are going to redshirt because they want to just hold over for next year when there'll be more playing time available. One game in the books, Alabama looking good. And the Alabama women, too. Let's talk about the women a little bit. They're preseason top 25 for the first time in 25 years. They opened at home last night as well as part of a women-men's doubleheader at Coleman Coliseum. And as impressive as the men's win was, theirs was bigger. They beat New Orleans 115-53. You had Sarah Ashley Barker, who's a Player of the Year candidate, and Aleani combining for 48 points, which is impressive, and they absolutely took care of business, Rod. This is a women's team this year. I think it isn't just a goal to get in the NCAA tournament. I think it's to win a couple games, get to the round of 16, or who knows.
What a start.
They're good.
I mean, yeah. I mean, big start to that. You know, again, a long way to go, but at the same time, they've recruited really well. They've put themselves in a position. They've kind of taken this little steps over the last few years, so now hopefully they'll take a bigger one.
Big crowd last night. Crimson Chaos was there before the men's game, and after the game, Christy Curry said, hey, we love the fan support, but this needs to be the case every time we play. Please come out and support this basketball team.
I'm asking Alabama Nation right now to come back out and support us. This can't just be because it's a doubleheader. These kids deserve for people to be in the stands, and that's my plea. I appreciate everybody that is, but it's time that Alabama family steps up and comes out and supports us consistently. We play at 2 o'clock Sunday against Troy, and we would really appreciate the support.
I second that. They're an exciting team to watch, too, as she mentioned, 2 o'clock at home on Sunday afternoon against the Troy Trojans, an in-state matchup. Well, coming up next, your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, that phone number, as always, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. You can also send us an email at the address on your screen. We want to hear from you, Tider Insider Nation, and I know we're still not on all the cable systems and satellite systems. Hopefully that's going to change soon. But if you're watching us, feel free to call in. It'll be a lot easier to get through on the phone lines. 205-348-9882. We'll be right back after this. One of our favorite segments, and we can't get everybody in. I list everybody on social media. It's like 30-something guys. I listed Bama in the NFL from Sunday. There goes Derrick Henry, his 101st rushing touchdown, passing Sean Alexander for 8th most in NFL history. Sean Alexander should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Tua was sharp. He went 25 of 28, just 3 incompletions with 2 touchdowns, no picks. That's one to Jalen Waddle right there, but the Dolphins lost on a 61-yard field goal. Bryce Young got a win. How about that, Rodney? He's awesome, back. Yeah. 2 touchdowns. He threw an interception. The interception hit the guy right in the numbers.
Yeah.
Not his fault. There goes Josh Jacobs. He had a nice game. Didn't carry it much, but carried it 11 times for 89 yards, even though they lost to the Lions. They lost to the Lions a lot to do with the fact that Jahmyr Gibbs had a big game. And check out this play. This is Jalen to Devontae Smith. This is a terrific throw, but watch this catch, Rodney. Gets the feet in, one-hander. I mean, he's just Devontae Smith. That's why he won a Heisman Trophy. He is special. And a lot of other guys excelling every week with Bama in the NFL. The Eagles have now won 4 games in a row. All right, welcome back into the program. And phone lines are open at 205-348-9882. Again, I know we got a limited audience, but if you want to call in, you can get through. But since we don't have a phone call, let's go ahead and get to our email question of the day. And it's brought to you by KDM Service Corporation. When it comes to heating and air conditioning, KDM Service Corporation serves your family like our family. Here we go, Rodney. And it is, will Alabama stick to the running game against LSU? That's from Barry and Coleman. We talked about this earlier, Barry. And when we say running game, I think Rodney and I both mean with the backs. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Milroe's a factor, and we saw what he did against Georgia. But when we're talking about running game, we're talking about establishing the running game with the running backs the way they did against Missouri. I hope they stick with it.
Yeah, I do too. I think you do those. You emphasize these 2 guys because they're extremely talented. I think the offensive line, you kind of got to develop that. Yeah, and I sense that, Gary, in the second half. As we sit there in the Missouri game, I really sense Alabama, the offensive line, starting to take over that line of scrimmage, maybe for the first time this year, really, in terms of the emphasis of it. So really looking forward to that.
Another thing about LSU, very good in the secondary, but they're another 5 DB team. I think you can run right at them.
Well, here's the thing. When you talk to LSU people, when Bo Davis got there, before he got there, they said, look, he's inheriting a defensive line with not much talent. Where they've come from the start of the year, done a tremendous job.
Of course, he does a nice job everywhere he's at.
Does.
But I still think you can get physical and run on that football team. Alabama needs to look to do that. All right, still to come on Tider Insider Television. We'll get to more of your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, this is an opportunity. I know we don't have our full audience because of our situation with our transmitter, but if you're watching, you can get through. Right now, phone lines are wide open, 205-348-9882. We've also got some more emails to get to and a Twitter question as well. Tider Insider TV. We'll be right back after this. Postseason's always a second opportunity. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt last week and then turned around and played them again in the SEC tournament opening round and beat the Commodores 2-1. So after losing last weekend, they came back this past weekend and beat them on a Sunday. Now Alabama takes on the 4-seed South Carolina. Vandy was the 5-seed. That's tonight at 7. This is down in Pensacola, Florida. Alabama lost to the Gamecocks too, but 3-1. But you know what? Second time around, if they win this one, they'll move into the semifinals to play the winner of Mississippi State and Tennessee. So go Bama soccer. Under Wes Hart, they've really become a really strong postseason team. So they'll be looking for more magic tonight at 7 down in Pensacola. All right, let's get back. We're going to do a Twitter question here in this segment instead of an email and instead of a phone call. So let's get to our Twitter question from Goal Line Stan. Can the offensive line give Milroe enough time in the pocket, or will he be forced to scramble and create himself? Good question, Goal Line Stan. I think that what Rodney and I hope is that the offensive line will obviously hold up well, but that also, that much like the Missouri game, there's going to be a lot of play designs to get the ball out of his hand so he doesn't really have to stay in the pocket that long. Get the running game going, quick passes, but if he needs to, he can always pull it down, Rob. But, yeah, we would love to see him have time and be effective in the passing game as well.
Yeah, and I think they've given him good time. Yeah, again, these teams are going to use pressure. They're going to come after you. They've got to force his hand. So they turn up the heat. But, yeah, I mean, he's got to step up when he has opportunities to step up in the pocket, not drift backwards, but step up, make throws, and, Gary, take off. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with taking off. With his legs, he can do a lot of damage.
All right, still to come on TITV. We're going to get to our predictions. And what do we think is going to happen? You'll find out next on Tider Insider TV. And Rodney, it's prediction time for Alabama and LSU. As always, you lead us off.
You know, Gary, you talked about the Alabama mystique down there at LSU. I think it continues. I've got Alabama 27-24.
You know, if this had been before the Texas A&M game, I would have picked LSU. But I saw what they were able to do defensively against Nussmeier. I think Alabama's defensive line is playing its best football of the year. They're going to get after him. Alabama does enough on offense. I think they break 30 points, very close to you, 31-24. I think Bama is in line after this one for the college football playoff. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Visit Tuscaloosa. Replay tonight at 10:30. Find it anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Good night, everybody.